it's just become a fucking crapshoot. Like, you go in, you queue, oh, there are 18 bots, better leave.
It hurt feeling like I love that community so much, and I've only ever wanted the best for it.
Probably Valve. No, yeah, it is Valve's biggest mistake when handling Team Fortress 2. Period. Like, nothing else comes close to that f***ing travesty of an update.
Overwatch 2 was a f***ing mistake.
Even 7 years after its release, there was nothing quite like TF2. You'd be hard-pressed to find a game so quotable, so oozing with personality and boundless charm.
Yo, what's up?
Once I saw the characters, the art style, and the humor, I was hooked. Despite the fact I had a raging hate boner for every single first-person shooter.
9 classes so distinct in both personality and gameplay, you could put thousands of hours into a single character and not get bored. It was the first great hero shooter.
I gave it a shot, and it was immediately a lot of fun, and I've been hopelessly addicted ever since.
And it only seemed to get better with age. After TF2 released, the developers kept adding cool new content. Those classes you could sink thousands of hours into got brand new unlockable weapons which increased their depth tenfold and created brand new alternative playstyles. A character like Pyro at the game's launch could be seen as shallow and boring. But with the introduction of weapons like the extinguisher and flare gun, you could do some juicy stuff like this. Now that's awesome.
But I would say the thing that really hooked me and got me in deep was rocket jumping. I definitely get the most into games where there's kind of a unique skill that you can really latch onto and just feel infinite improvement.
Team Fortress 2 pioneered the live service game model, constantly switching up the game and making it endlessly replayable, all with a clear vision and an endless passion for the game and its community. Not to mention millions of dollars from kids stealing their parents' credit cards to gamble on loot crates, but that part's not so fun. But you wanna know something that's cooler than gambling on loot boxes? Today's sponsor. I just keep getting better and better at these transitions, I swear. Wanted Dead is a stylish hack and slash game developed by 110 Industries. Did you love that unhinged era of games from the PS3 and Xbox 360? Well, then these guys got your back because the gameplay and world of Wanted Dead is filled to the brim with non-stop action and chaos that perfectly captures the spirit of those older titles. Seriously, the game gets wild. You're gonna go from turning people into red mush to singing 99 Love Balloons. And not only can you hack and slash through foes using your katana, but you can also pull out your gun and do some serious John Wick moves that make you feel like a BAMF. Which of course stands for Baller at Moving Fast. And you better be moving fast because this game presents you with an actual challenge with tough to defeat enemies and boss battles. And I personally love it when a game isn't afraid to punch me in the teeth. The game also still receives patches that improve the game, like improving the game's performance, the inclusion of DLSS and FSR support for Steam Cloud Saving, and a statistics menu that tracks achievement and trophies. So, if a game with crazy finishing moves, exciting boss battles, seamless combat, and insane minigames sounds exciting, then please check them out using the link in the description and pinned comment. And if it doesn't sound exciting, that means you are dead. So don't miss out on a unique experience like Wanted Dead. Despite being overlooked, it's finally gaining recognition from gamers in major outlets like Kotaku and Gaming Bolt. Now, with the game being regularly updated, it's a better time than ever to dive in. So take the opportunity. The game is available on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, and is also currently on sale for up to 67% up until the 21st on Steam and the 28th for PlayStation. The price on Xbox has also been significantly adjusted as well, so please check them out using my link in the description. Thank you for sponsoring the video, Wanted Dead. It's been great to collaborate with you again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. And on June 17th, 2014, the game would receive the Love and War update, which brought with it the longest short to date, a whole brand new set of weapons that would grow to become mainstays, and introduced the Conga, a dancing taunt you could do with enemies and friends alike. Whole 24-player servers would put down their weapons and dance, not as enemies, but as brothers. It was a special time for TF2. It was the golden age. Over the years, many so-called TF2 killers would try to take the crown of the hero shooter genre, but none would succeed. Even 7 years after its release, Team Fortress 2 was here to stay.
And at a moment like this, it strikes me. It has been something like 17 years, if my math holds up, since Blizzard opened the door to a new adventure. Well, I think 17 years is too long to wait. And my friends, the wait ends right now.
An elite international task force charged with ending the war and restoring liberty to all nations. Overwatch.
Just 4 months after TF2's Love and War update, Blizzard announced Overwatch at BlizzCon 2014, a team-based hero shooter with a diverse cast of dynamic characters, and many of the characters and game modes in Overwatch would draw heavy inspiration from TF2's characters and mechanics.
I do remember a lot of hype surrounding Overwatch when the game was announced in 2014, if I'm remembering correctly. And then when it released in 2016, there was a lot of hubbub surrounding the game. It was the spiritual successor to TF2. You got boobs and butts and guns. Why? And also classes. So why wouldn't anyone go and try this out? I don't blame anyone for doing that.
But Overwatch wasn't just a TF2 clone. No, it expanded upon the hero shooter genre by infusing it with MOBA-like abilities and large ultimate abilities that could change the tide of a battle with the press of a button. Team Fortress 2, while being a legendary title with an avid fan base, has never really seen any wide mainstream appeal, but Overwatch was different. The people loved what they saw, and Overwatch exploded into the mainstream. I feel like you could owe a lot of Overwatch's immediate popularity due to a wide cast of characters that people could relate to, a well-executed marketing strategy, and a revolutionary take on an old concept. Yep. But above all else, the game just looked really, really fun.
I just really love the class-based genre. It really clicked with me. TF2 introduced me to it, and I fell in love with it. So playing Overwatch was like a logical thing I was going to do after TF2.
For the first time ever, Valve had a legitimate competitor in the hero shooter market. Sure, there had been games in the past that tried to take TF2's crown, but those games lacked the quality and polish that TF2 had. Valve games were just so hard to compete with. I mean, people are still trying to rip off Left 4 Dead to this day. But if there was any game company that could rival an output as quality as Valve games, it was Blizzard. The studio behind Warcraft, StarCraft, Diablo. Overwatch appeared to just be the next in a long series of home runs from Blizzard. And with TF2 being 7 years old with a small community, it looked like Overwatch might actually be the TF2 killer to kill TF2.
What made me want to play Overwatch was that it was TF2-like. Everyone was toting it as the TF2 killer, and there had been many, many TF2 killer, quote-unquote TF2 killers. Overwatch seemed like the one, the big one.
It didn't help that only a month after Overwatch's announcement, the Team Fortress team did something they hardly ever did to this point. They done goofed. TF2's End of the Line update released just 1 month after Overwatch's massive announcement. The TF2 player base up until this point grew to expect new weapons, new maps, new item and balance changes with every update, but the End of the Line update only introduced a handful of cosmetic items, and any substantial content that could actually change the game was scrapped. The map Snowplow, originally intended to be included in the update, was scrapped for the reason of being too complicated for new players, a sentiment that was subsequently memed to death by the community. TF2's first impression after Overwatch's announcement was a critical misfire, and the following major updates, despite bringing in some well-liked features, received a mixed to negative response as well. Valve was fumbling with TF2 just as its biggest competitor was gaining hype at a breakneck pace. And as Valve struggled with TF2, it seemed Blizzard couldn't lose with Overwatch. Over time, Blizzard would reveal new exciting heroes and hold a closed beta that received widespread acclaim from everyone who got in. Even when Overwatch got into controversy, it was resolved quickly, and it didn't seem to slow the hype train down. such as when Tracer's victory pose was altered to be less sexual. People criticized Blizzard for caving to the stinky feminists, but it didn't take long for the debate to die down because Tracer's victory pose literally does not fucking matter at all. Fortunately for everyone, this was the last time Tracer's sexuality was ever controversial. If Valve was really going to compete with a title as modern and cutting edge as Overwatch, they needed to step up their game and innovate. They couldn't just keep doing what they already were. Valve was going to need to bring TF2 into the modern market, and luckily for them, they had an ace up their sleeve. Ever since TF2's early days, the game had a small but dedicated grassroots competitive scene. Even though TF2 was designed for 12v12 casual play, its skill ceiling and simple to understand gameplay also made for a great spectator sport. TF2 is kind of like the Smash Bros. Melee of the FPS genre. Both games were intentionally designed to not be taken too seriously. However, over the years, both games would evolve to have a competitive scene where players would push their skill to the absolute limit. And just like Melee, TF2 would grow to have its own tournaments complete with prize pools and entertaining figureheads like Banny and Seagull.
Oh.
Yo, come look at this. What? They're just migrating.
Wait, what the heck? God. Wait, what the heck? Somebody stop the colonizer! Somebody stop the colonizer! Almost done.
Alright, they're clear.
This whole scene was allowed to grow and flourish without Valve's input. Competitive was made for and made by the community. And if you don't believe me that competitive TF2 makes for a great spectator sport, just let me show you. If you didn't feel your blood pumping watching those insane plays, even a little bit, check your pulse, because you are dead. And since TF2's release, competitive gaming had been evolving into the next big new fad in the gaming market, esports. Games like League of Legends, Rocket League, and Call of Duty were pulling in massive crowds in officially licensed tournaments. Even Valve themselves were incredibly successful in esports with Counter-Strike and Dota 2. If Valve was going to bring TF2 into the modern era to compete with Overwatch, they already had the recipe for success. Valve just had to support an already existing competitive scene and grow TF2 to be an esport, a field they've already shown they can be successful in. Valve had already been working on implementing an official competitive mode since 2014, since before Overwatch had even been announced. So, as time went on and Overwatch was growing more and more popular each day, Valve was hard at work on this new update, consulting professional TF2 players and holding betas for the competitive matchmaking system.
A competitive matchmaking system is just cool to have. I'm competitive. I like playing things that are competitive level, so the idea was cool.
After TF2's losing streak of updates, Valve seriously needed a win. And as Valve cooked up this competitive update, Overwatch's release was growing closer and closer. Amazing trailers and cinematics kept dropping that expanded upon the interesting lore, new maps, characters that looked like a blast to play. People would have murdered someone to get their hands on this game early. And after all the hype and anticipation, on May 24th of 2016, the game would finally launch. Could Overwatch live up to the massive expectations hanging over it?
Overwatch is an incredible achievement in multiplayer shooter design. It bobs and weaves almost perfectly between being the quick fix adrenaline hit you might want after a long day of work and the thoughtful strategic multiplayer experience that becomes the center of evening-long binges with friends.
Overwatch is an intelligent cascade of disparate ideas, supporting one another, pouring into one another, and coiling around themselves as they flow into the brilliant shooter underneath.
In action, Overwatch looks exhilarating. Matches are a light show of effects as weapons fire and abilities trigger. The small, incidental detail is fantastic too. From the destructible objects in the spawn rooms to the way the cap of Junkrat's frag launcher flaps open and closes as you jump. What a freak.
It was a good game. Like, I don't think anyone can deny Overwatch was a great game.
Against all odds, Overwatch lived up to the immense hype and delivered an amazing experience. Overwatch at release was equal parts fun, chaotic, and hilarious.
What? Hey, if you don't want the robot, I'll take it. I like it.
These were the days when Overwatch had no restrictions or limits. If you wanted to run 6 Winstons, you could run 6 Winstons. And with more than 20 heroes to choose from at launch, damn near any gamer could pick up a controller and find a character that resonated with their playstyle.
The skills required for Overwatch are a bit different and more balanced due to the way heroes are constructed, both in kit and role. Overwatch emphasizes game sense, cooldown management, ult tracking, and positioning a lot more than casual TF2. If you aren't a figurative god at aiming, there are plenty of roles and character options that fit that lack of skill that allow you to still be an effective player.
Overwatch had millions of players and made Blizzard approximately $1 gazillion, not to mention all of the jobs it gave to independent artists. In just a short amount of time, Overwatch blew TF2 out of the water and became the king of the hero shooter genre. But Valve wasn't just gonna stand back and let it happen, no. This competitive update was finally ready. Oh yeah, this was it. The Meet Your Match update. This was going to be massive. 3 beloved community maps, a competitive matchmaking system, pastime. Nobody cared about pastime. And Valve would replace the standard quick play feature with a casual matchmaking system. This would completely shake up how people have been playing the game since 2007. But maybe this new matchmaking system could be better after all and more appealing to new players.
Like all TF2 updates, I liked Meet Your Match. I thought it was pretty cool, all of the rebalances and features that they added to the game. And I think that it was cool that they were trying to implement a more modernized, streamlined version of matchmaking into TF2.
And the day after Meet Your Match was announced, the update would be pushed onto the live servers. So, was Meet Your Match as successful as it aimed to be? No.
What did you think of TF2's Meet Your Match update? Oh man, I liked the concept of it. The execution was horrible, and I think that put a big Sour Patch Kid in the mouth of a lot of people who would have probably liked the content of that update if it wasn't presented to them in such a scuffed way.
The Meet Your Match update was an immense failure, the likes of which was unprecedented for the TF2 community. If the update's main goal was to modernize TF2 by introducing official matchmaking to the community, it failed in every aspect. And to understand what made TF2's official competitive so bad, it's important to understand why people even liked it in the first place. TF2's competitive is split into 2 popular formats. Highlander, a 9v9 competitive match where each team has 1 player of each class, and Sixes, a 6v6 format where any class is playable. Trying to make a matchmaking system for Highlander would be near impossible, and if TF2 esports was successful, it would mean flying out 9 people to tournaments. Logistically, it made a lot more sense for TF2's officially endorsed competitive mode to be Sixes. However, unlike Highlander, Sixes TF2 is much more strict with its rule set. Sixes has class limits to prevent class stacking. For instance, stacking 6 engineers to defend a point is overpowered and not fun to fight or watch. Sixes tournaments also have item bans on certain weapons that are overpowered or slow the game down. Items like the Wrangler, Vaccinator, and the Gloves of Running Urgently did not work in a competitive environment, and thus were blacklisted in tournaments. Anything that didn't fit the mold of what the competitive players wanted was banned. However, Valve's official competitive mode was completely no restrictions. You could use as many busted items as you want, you could stack as many of one class as you wanted. Some people loved the creative expression of Valve's no restrictions format, but the established competitive community that banned these things for a reason were put off by this choice. Valve's compromise was a series of balance changes intended to make certain weapons more balanced for the new competitive format, but many of the changes directed at competitive players inadvertently ruined them in 12v12 casual, the mode that the vast majority of the community had been playing. People who played casual without ever so much as touching competitive suddenly had some of their favorite items ruined in the interests of a side of the player base they never interacted with. A weapon like the Righteous Bison was a total meme weapon prior to Meet Your Match. However, for some reason, this item was massively giga-nerfed out of nowhere in the Meet Your Match update, to the point of being completely unusable. Other items like the Buffalo Steak Sandwich and the Shortstop would receive changes that would neuter them as well. These items were never particularly powerful in casual mode, but the items had niche uses in competitive mode that would cause them to be banned, so they had to be nerfed. There was a fundamental disconnect between the casual fan base Valve had been cultivating for over 9 years and the competitive scene that has played by their own rule set for just as long. It was impossible to satisfy both player bases at the same time, yet Valve tried and failed anyway. And that's without even diving into how the matchmaking system was held together by duct tape and prayers. For starters, competitive mode had more abandonment problems than the average art school student. People who left competitive matches would receive very light punishments, and matches with leavers would result in no one gaining or losing rank. A majority of matches would have a player abandon, and no one wants to play in a competitive system where you lose valuable time and progress due to events completely out of your own control. Not to mention, the wait times were atrociously long. And Valve's anti-cheat systems are less of an actual anti-cheat and more of a suggestion. It wouldn't take long for competitive mode to have a serious cheating problem. So competitive mode forced you to wait a long time on an empty loading screen to get put into a match with no class limits, no item restrictions, hackers, and even if you stuck the match out, someone was likely to leave during the match, which would completely invalidate all the time you had just spent playing and waiting for this match. Gaining rank in TF2's competitive mode felt less like climbing the rank ladder and improving your skill set, and more like Sisyphus rolling the boulder up a hill eternally, but someone leaves the match, and the boulder falls all the way down to the bottom. One must imagine TF2 players happy.
I understood the want for a Meet Your Match update, but you know, I touched it a couple of times. I never thought it was a thing that really like spoke to what TF2 is. It's not the kind of game where, and it's especially not the kind of competitive where the fun comes out by playing with like 5 randoms, which, if we're honest, is what 99% of those games are going to be.
The competitive community would go back to their own leagues and tournaments, where they had control over the rules, and Valve's competitive vision for TF2 was dead on arrival. But that wasn't all. There was also the new casual mode, that might have been even worse than the competitive. Before, TF2 players could use the community server browser and quick play to find matches, and it was near instantaneous. But now, casual players were funneled into the same boring loading screen as the competitive players to play a casual match, and the waiting didn't end there. Before Meet Your Match, you could jump right into the action as soon as you joined into a server, but now, there was a whole warm-up period while players joined that could last for minutes on end, for a casual match. Another problem with the casual matchmaking is that before, if the lobby didn't like the flow of a match or it was a complete roll, there were tools to stop it. Auto balance, team scramble, voting to change the map. With this current system, if the quality of a match was low, the players could do nothing to stop it.
The attempt to modernize the queuing system and menus ended up taking away a core part of the game: community servers. I was alright with them removing them from a map queue because sometimes you'd be dumped into some tricked out servers, but the complete removal of them with no player option and shoving them into a side menu was detrimental to the game's health.
If you're getting rolled in a casual match, your first instinct might be to leave and find another match. And players did just that. Often, games would devolve into complete rolls where the losing team would have a fraction of the players they started with. Not only that, but those players would be slapped with a penalty for leaving a casual match. Oh god, why?
TF2 was originally designed as a 12v12 free-for-all, where anyone can come in and out whenever they want, play as they want, and do whatever they please, for as long as they desire. To then funnel everyone down the same slide in the form of a matchmaking system, and then implement a punishment. That was a deliberate decision, mind you, but then they removed it because people were fucking pissed. I can't believe that they did not think this through more.
Not to mention that these casual servers lack the moderation of community servers and use the same sloppy anti-cheat as the competitive servers. So many matches would be instantly filled with hackers and aimbots. And remember, if you leave, you get a penalty.
They are all hacking.
Are you shitting me?
Yeah.
Should I record this?
This isn't fun at all.
Record this.
I'm recording right now.
Oh my fucking god.
The Meet Your Match update was a complete failure. Plain and simple. TF2 had been just fine with the quick play system pre-Meet Your Match. It wasn't perfect, but it was a lot more functional than this. The game was built off of the community and casual 12v12 servers, and the competitive community was completely grassroots. Valve didn't nurture the competitive community, they pirated it and bastardized it. All this update succeeded in was giving the fans who had it suddenly thrust upon them culture shock.
There wasn't extensive polling, right? Like, hey, would you guys be interested in a matchmaking system for as a replacement for quick play? As a replacement for how 95% of people engage with TF2? Like, we weren't expecting that. That just happened.
The TF2 team had just dropped their worst in what people would already consider a losing streak of updates. Valve themselves would acknowledge the state of the game in a blog post, promising that things would get better. There was still hope to hold on to. Along with Meet Your Match was the promise of a major new update with brand new weapons, something the game hadn't seen in years. And the class the update was going to be themed around was the Pyro. The fans just had to hold out for a little longer.
But I enjoyed it. To see how it's affected long term, it's sad it didn't pan out, but I think the general idea of appealing to a bit more of a competitive audience, in retrospect, I have subscribed to TF2 as a more casual identity, but I guess it just didn't really pan out, and I think that's okay. Some people treat it as like the 9/11 of TF2, which I understand the arguments for, but to me, I was kind of it just didn't pan out.
And a few months after TF2's competitive system failed, as if to rub salt in the wound, Blizzard would announce the Overwatch League. Not only had Overwatch managed to hook in a casual player base, but it also aimed to have a multi-million-dollar professional esports league for the competitive players as well. Overwatch had seemingly done the impossible where TF2 failed by successfully appealing to both the casual and competitive markets at the same time. And the Overwatch League was gonna be huge. Not only did Blizzard already have success in the esports scene with titles like StarCraft and Hearthstone, but the project was being spearheaded by Bobby Kotick, the CEO of Blizzard. Bobby also managed to convince a plethora of other mega-rich billionaires to back the league too, like Robert Kraft, the CEO of the New England Patriots in the NFL.
And it's going to take some time, but what will make it really easy is having great partners like Robert Kraft.
Overwatch League was so big in scope, it was going to use an international city-based model, where Dallas could fight Shanghai for a crowd of thousands of people.
At the time, fantastic idea. I think it was a great idea. I'm all for competitive esports. I think they're great. Where you were seeing the more and more emergence, esports looked like it was the next big thing. For them to fully back a league, fun teams, fun players, I think it was a great idea.
Not only did Overwatch League hit the ground running in terms of community interest, it also had millions of dollars backing it, sponsors ready to support it, and people ready to put the work in to be on the best team. Overwatch's winning streak didn't end there, because in July of 2016, Blizzard released Ana, the game's first of many post-launch heroes. The best part is that you didn't have to pay to use them or anything, and Ana was an amazingly designed hero that perfectly matched the vision of Overwatch. Not only were they balanced enough for competitive and casual play, but their nano ultimate ability had hilarious interactions with other characters, leading to hilarious plays like the Beyblade meta. Overwatch was able to maintain the hype even post-launch, and it seemed like they weren't gonna stop anytime soon. And as Overwatch fans were enjoying their game, the TF2 players, forsaken by Valve, began to despise it. Ever since Overwatch had been announced, the two were pitted as rivals by the industry. But after Overwatch's massive success and TF2's recent massive failure, the TF2 community started to really resent Overwatch. Overwatch became a non-stop topic of discussion in the community, to a fanatical extent, and when inevitably many TF2 content creators and figureheads like Muselk, Stir, and Seagull began to play another game from the same genre, the fans got rabid.
Have I received harassment due to choosing to play one game over the other? Yeah. You could say that. Sorry, I just gotta have. I'm not sipping tea right now to make a point. I actually just have a cup of tea, but it just kind of like sucked. Not that I want to be liked, but it hurt feeling like I love that community so much, and I've only ever wanted the best for it.
On the other hand, maybe you, I don't know, left one of the other comments on that video, and you have a lot of unrequited pent-up anger and aggression, and you really need to resolve the ultimate question: what kind of shit vid is this? You used to be gaming, what happened to you? There is a blatant hypocrisy and an immediate turn in the way the audience was reacting, that they were calling shit I was making lazy. And not because it was lazy, because it wasn't Team Fortress 2.
I have functionally received harassment, but more so not necessarily because of the other one, but because I'm not playing TF2. That's the conundrum of someone who's known for their TF2 content.
I do have a lot of memories from 2016 of other YouTubers and also competitive players catching a lot of shit for jumping ship from TF2 to Overwatch. I don't blame them for that, because at the time in 2016, the other questions will get to this, the game was not in a good state.
It wasn't just a rivalry to the TF2 players, no. This was going to be an all-out war to prove that TF2 was the better game once and for all. And for how many people were fighting hard to defend TF2's title as the best hero shooter, those same people would agree that the game was in the worst state it had ever been in. The months following Meet Your Match were rough. It was hard to recover from as hard of a blunder as that update was. But Valve was working to resolve some of the major issues. Just a day after Meet Your Match, the abandonment penalty for casual was removed, and many more improvements to the matchmaker and competitive mode would come over the next few months. However, after enough time passed, it became clear that the competitive mode had almost no players, with almost everyone migrating back to the casual servers. Valve had made a promise for a major update centered around Pyro, but as time went on, the Team Fortress community received nothing. Sure, the game would receive its standard Halloween update, but it contained nothing more than cosmetic items and temporary community-created seasonal maps. Where was the content of substance? Where were the new weapons? Where was the balancing? Where were the maps? Did Valve really drop the worst update of all time and run away? Well, on November 21st, Valve would finally break the silence. In a blog post uploaded to the TF2 website, Valve would explain the Pyro update was still being worked on, and it had an official theme: the jungle. Valve urged the community to make jungle-themed content to prepare for the update. There was a glimmer of hope for TF2 players, and Valve's task to create jungle-themed content gave the community a sense of unity that was sorely needed in the aftermath of Meet Your Match. However, the TF2 community's feud with Overwatch was still going strong, and it wouldn't help that a few weeks after the jungle update reveal, this would happen.
Here it is. The Game of the Year at the Game Awards 2016 is Overwatch.
Overwatch was still on a roll. Not only have they been adding beloved seasonal modes like Lucio Ball and Junkenstein's Revenge, but they've been releasing even more major content. Sombra would be released after a whole ARG teasing her existence. New maps like Eichenwald, Tracer was revealed to be a lesbian, which gave the gaming community a genuine lesbian icon. Of course, this ticked some people off because it was inconsistent with some of the fan-made material they were a fan of, but let's be honest, these guys never would have had a shot with Tracer anyway. Real women actually like Bionicles and what Counter-Strike skins you use. And on top of all of this, the Overwatch League was looking more and more promising as time went on, as people got a taste of what Overwatch esports was like. Mobility-centric heroes like Tracer, Genji, Winston, and D.Va would become contenders for the best heroes to play in Overwatch, spawning the dive meta, where the teams would dive into one another to pick fights and create exciting movement-centric playstyle that was captivating to watch. Blizzard would also begin to tease Doomfist, a character the fans have been theorizing about since the game's launch. And then Orisa would release instead, a Reinhardt alternative hero with a shield. Oh, okay. A couple months later, Doomfist released, and his movement and combo-centric gameplay slotted right into the dive meta at the time. However, the cracks in Overwatch's design philosophy did start to show during this era. Even though the game was still very much in its prime with massive player counts and a fun dive-centric meta, some things just weren't fun to play against. Things like double sniper comps with Hanzo and Widowmaker just weren't fun for the players on the receiving end. And one of the biggest offenders was Mercy, especially her ultimate ability. Mercy's ultimate ability let her revive all of her dead teammates, which let her revive her entire team after a lost team fight. This essentially deleted all of the hard work and effort it took to win a team fight, and encouraged Mercy players to hide in a corner for a massive revive instead of actually contributing to the team fight. It was pretty clear that this ability was super annoying, so the Blizzard team decided to give Mercy a rework.
What's up everyone, this is Jeff here with another developer update to tell you about something super awesome, which is big changes coming for Mercy.
The Resurrect ultimate was retooled into the ability Valkyrie. It gave Mercy the ability to indefinitely fly while it was active, increased the effectiveness of her damage and healing boosts, and gave her blaster unlimited ammo during its duration, which finally let Mercy mains unleash their homicidal urges and frag out like the rest of the team. Good stuff. Overall, a great rework to Mercy's kit that didn't get rid of her utility, but made her more engaging to play with and against. Bravo. Except that's not where the changes ended. Mercy's Resurrect ability didn't go away. It was too iconic and so wrapped up in her identity, it had to stay in some capacity. So, Resurrect was retooled from an ultimate ability to a standard cooldown ability, reviving a single person at a time instead of full teams like before. Problem being that the new Valkyrie ultimate reset Rez's cooldown, and Rez had a decreased cooldown during the duration of Valkyrie. So if you played effectively, you could still pull off massive Rezes while having the added utility of the new ultimate.
Ready to go? I'm not seeing a kill yet.
Hey!
Oh, there you go. Hey! And he's back again. There you go. Okay. And then you're back again, boy.
Thank you. That's
Infinite resuscitation.
That's another res.
Oh, boy.
That's another res,
Yep.
another
And-
kill.
Okay, and give me just 1 second, and we're back again, boys.
In trying to fix a problem with a hero's balance, they giga buffed a character straight into the meta. Now, the Moth meta was king. The players who wished for Mercy's res to be changed unintentionally wished on the monkey's paw because now, Mercy was unavoidable. Blizzard unintentionally bringing upon the Moth meta showed that Overwatch's balancing was like a house of cards, a very delicately balanced ecosystem. If Overwatch was going to be the esport Blizzard wanted it to be, Blizzard was going to have to treat the game's balance with intense care to avoid spawning unfun metas like the Moth meta, especially with the first season of Overwatch League on the horizon. Thankfully, Blizzard never fucked up Overwatch's balance again. It's been a year since the reveal of TF2's Jungle update, and almost a year and a half since the last major update. This was an unprecedented content drought for TF2, all while still dealing with the aftermath of Meet Your Match. Valve promised. They promised an update, they promised fixes, they promised content, and there was nothing. Nothing. That was until...
Welcome to Mercenary High!
The Pyro update had finally arrived, and it had a name. Jungle Inferno. It had everything the community was asking for. New weapons, new maps, a brand new animated short, an overhaul to the weapon skin system, new cosmetics, weapon balancing, an overhaul of the contract system. It's so much more. Valve really hadn't abandoned TF2 since Meet Your Match. They put the work in and gave the community one of the most massive updates the game would ever receive, and it all looked so cool. The anticipation for Jungle Inferno was even higher than Meet Your Match. If Meet Your Match was make or break, Jungle Inferno was make or total annihilation. Valve couldn't afford another colossal failure with TF2. They needed Jungle Inferno to be great. And over the course of 4 days, Valve would build hype for the update. This was gonna be amazing. And then the update was delayed by a day. No. Not again. This can't be a repeat of last time. But on October 20th, 2017, the TF2 community would finally receive the Jungle Inferno update after over a year and a half of waiting. How was it?
I think I'm in the minority here, but I actually really liked Jungle Inferno, and I enjoyed the content it gave us.
I liked it. I don't know why people are so butthurt about it all the time, but I liked it. All right? There's some things about Pyro that still suck, sure, but Pyro now is way better than it was before that update, so win-win.
It was great. It wasn't perfect, it certainly had its issues, but it was great. And a great update is exactly what the community needed. A lot of the new weapons were a blast to use.
I really liked it. The Dragon's Fury is awesome. That was an awesome weapon.
The Dragon's Fury offered an aim-heavy, DPS-centric playstyle. The second banana finally offered a viable side grade to the dominant sandwich. And not everyone loves the thermal thruster, but I do, and my opinion is the only one that matters, damn it. The hot hand and gas passer were hot ass, but given that even the best TF2 updates weapons were pretty hit or miss, I'd say Jungle Inferno gets a pass. The item balancing was also mostly a success. Items like the Fists of Steel, Dead Ringer, and Reserve Shooter would all receive very justified nerfs, while underused items like the Panic Attack, Your Eternal Reward, and Mantreads would all receive changes that would finally give them a time to shine. Sure, the update had its fair share of controversial changes, but nothing as outrageously bad as nerfing the Bison for no reason. Okay, well technically they did nerf the Bison again, even harder, but this time it was unintentional.
I liked Jungle Inferno a lot as well. I was pleased that the Pyro did get updated, and once again I was happy that there were rebalances in the update.
The new weapons and balancing were fun, the overhauled skin and contract systems were exciting, the cosmetics were great, the maps were fun. God damn, this was a solid update. For the first time in years, Valve finally had a win with TF2. Overwatch may have had more players, more consistent updates, and a giant esports league in the making, but TF2 players finally got some primo-ass content. Step off, Overwatch fans, we got 2 fart jokes in 1 update. But even if TF2 had a brief win, the history these two games shared was just beginning.
The time is now. Years of dedication, months of sacrifice have all led to this moment.
This was it. The Overwatch League's first season was underway. Overwatch was officially an esport. For the past year, the league has been forming. Each team was composed of players who have been training non-stop in preparation, and it was finally time to put those skills to the test. Mercy had been toned down since the days of the Moth meta, and the game's competitive scene still heavily revolved around the dive team composition. Heroes like Winston, Tracer, Lucio, and D.Va kept the tempo of matches quick-paced, which made early Overwatch League captivating to watch.
Are you alive?
definitely, well, never mind. Sinatra finds him, and that's gonna be it. This is when Architect feels like it's time to go, hashing them all to bits. It's just...
Blizzard also introduced Overwatch League tokens, which you could earn by just watching Overwatch League matches for some cool exclusive skins. For the people who have been fans of Overwatch for the past 2 years, it was exciting to finally see the game be played at a top level, and they were directly rewarded by Blizzard for doing so. However, a problem was starting to arise. Although the dive meta had its hype moments with its fast-paced, damage-focused gameplay, it was the only meta, and it had been the only meta for quite a while. Dive was too dominant. After a while, every Overwatch League devolved into the same characters with the same strategies. Competitive Overwatch's entertainment is in its strategizing and its playmaking. If every match is played out in the same way, Overwatch esports would get very dull for viewers very quickly. Blizzard needed a solution to Dive's absolute dominance over the meta, and they would find their solution in another popular team strategy, Brawl comps. If Dive centered around high mobility and picks, then Brawl was all about creating a wall and getting up close and personal with the enemy. Heroes like Reinhardt, Zarya, and Lucio that could use their shields, barriers, and endurance to rip and tear through the enemy. If Blizzard could create a powerful hero and slot them into the Brawl role, it could create a counter to Dive in the meta and shake up the league. And on March 20th of 2018, we'd see Blizzard's solution to Dive, Brigitte. But before I talk about Brigitte, do you remember earlier when I talked about how Overwatch's balance is a very delicate ecosystem? See, Overwatch is like a forest, and in that forest you have wolves, and the wolves can be very problematic. They can hurt local livestock and just be an overall nuisance. So, what do you do with a bunch of annoying wolves in your forest? Well, you kill them, of course. But by killing the wolves, you failed to realize that the local deer population would surge without a natural predator. Now, the massive deer population eats way too much of the local fauna and causes irreparable damage to the ecosystem. That short-term solution of killing the wolves has just spawned a whole bunch of long-term issues that you didn't account for. By adding Brigitte, Blizzard killed the wolves, and now it was time for a new animal to dominate. Except it wasn't deer, it was goats. Blizzard's intention with adding Brigitte was to counter the dominant Dive meta, but Brigitte's addition caused irreparable damage to the game's balance that it is still recovering from. But how? Let's dive into her kit. Brigitte is a support hero with a high health count, a melee weapon, and a shield. It's pretty obvious Brigitte was supposed to synergize with the Brawl comps Blizzard wanted to encourage, getting up close and personal to ward off divers. However, the rest of her kit was highly problematic. Brigitte had access to not only one, but 2 crowd control abilities to deter attackers. This was a pretty clear response to close-range heroes like Tracer and Genji. If you tried to dive a Brigitte as either of these heroes, you would be stunned and instantly killed. And that's not where the problems ended. Possibly the most problematic abilities Brigitte had were in her supportive armor packs and Inspire passive ability. Brigitte's armor packs added overhealth to every hero in the game, and when applied to a team's tank, it made them even harder to kill. And Inspire was a passive ability that allowed Brigitte to heal all of her surrounding allies in an AoE, just by hurting enemies. Brigitte's high sustainability and crowd control made her almost impossible to kill as a DPS, and her high AoE healing and ability to give overhealth made her synergize extremely well with tanks. DPS heroes were great because they were extremely low maintenance for support heroes with their low health counts in comparison to tanks. If you had a character that could just heal every tank at once, why even bother running DPS heroes? Shortly after Brigitte was added, an unknown team named GOATS swept the 2018 Open Division Season 2 tournament in North America with a team composed of 3 healers and 3 tanks. Using the power of Brigitte, this team composition rolled anything that crossed its path through sheer tankiness and ridiculous healing output without a single damage hero. This was the GOATS meta. Gone were the days of high-octane, mobility-centered gameplay. The GOATS comp slowed the game to a crawl, making for a terrible, cluttered spectator sport. The composition also required very little mechanical skill or strategizing, as the composition's tankiness was so powerful that mistakes were hardly ever punished. The GOATS meta was horrible. People instantly wanted dive back.
An attack that come through, split the Outlaws up, win that fight without ultimates.
We do see the Outlaws are going to pull out Dante's Tracer. This has been some of the things that Outlaws fans have been waiting for is a good Tracer player on Houston. It's Jake on the far. This combo's worked well for them before, but as soon as they see the defensive setup, they will just simply swap it away. Crucial time lost here for the Outlaws.
After just 2 years of consistently fun gameplay for casuals and competitive fans alike, Blizzard shattered the game's balance and enjoyment for players across the board. Across all skill levels, everyone could agree on one thing. Goats fucking sucked.
I think I have a bit of a weird take on this, because I actually really liked Overwatch. Even through like things like the Goats meta, for people who know what that was, where it was like 3 support, 3 tank. A lot of people didn't like that. I still kind of enjoyed that.
Except El Maxo, I guess. El Maxo liked Goats. Good for him. But as Overwatch fans had just entered a dark period with Brigitte, TF2 fans were still riding the enjoyment of Jungle Inferno. The new weapons, balancing, and maps added long-term enjoyment to the game. And on March 28th of 2018, TF2 fans would be delightfully surprised by another big update. It's never been officially named by Valve, but the fans have coined their own nickname for it. This was the Blue Moon update. On the surface, the update seemed small, just a cosmetic case. But underneath the hood was a massive reworking of the matchmaking system and weapon balancing. And as far as weapon balancing updates go, this might just be the best balancing TF2 ever got, with very reasonable changes and reworks to items that needed them. They even changed the short circuit to fire a projectile deleting Hadouken. Just make it so you can't spam it on the payload card, I swear to God, Valve. And the matchmaking got so much better. Gone were the boring wait times for Meet Your Match. Now you can queue for a match from anywhere in the game, even if you're already in a match. It was easier than ever to jump from game to game as you saw fit. Not only that, but Valve also improved the skill-based matchmaking, which made for better balanced matches for both competitive and casual. Valve even redid the competitive ranking system to be more in line with Counter-Strike, Valve's actually successful competitive video game. Competitive mode was still pretty much dead from its release in Meet Your Match, but with proper care from Valve, it seemed like casual could still live on. Casual mode still wasn't perfect, but it looked like Valve was ready to put the work in to redeem themselves. Looking back though, the TF2 community should have appreciated the Blue Moon update more, because what the community had no way of knowing at the time was that the road ahead for TF2 was very, very rough and very, very dark. Despite a year passing since her release and many nerfs, Brigitte was still an essential pick, and Goats was still dominating the meta. The time where dive comps flourished was long gone. In their chase of esports fame, Blizzard never realized that maybe Overwatch just never made for a good esport. That's a pretty bold statement, so let me explain myself. What makes for a good esport? Well, a good sport is simple. Hell, most sports revolve around getting the object from one side of the arena to the other. The simpler it is for a common spectator to understand, the easier it is to pull them in and get invested. And while esports is vastly different from physical sports, both need to be easy to understand and easily readable for the spectator. Allow me to use what I think is the best esport as an example. Counter-Strike. In Counter-Strike, one team needs to detonate the bomb, and the other needs to prevent the bomb from detonating. You can watch a match of Counter-Strike, and even if you've never played the game before, you can still understand what's happening. Here, check this out.
They aren't rushing this time around. They're taking their sweet time, hoping to catch somebody peek on Envy's side. And well, that's what happens when you go around the corner. Happy with Wandig. Oh, and another one! Oh, and a third! Happy! He could get another one here too, Dupree! Dupree is like sweating bullets! Happy's gonna get the quad kill in the ace! What is this?
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on him. He's got to hit these shots. We saw Fall in this spot before, the same spot, but with much more utility to work with. Here he comes once again. The first base is a Dren. He's going to hit the ground there as Cold. Oh, what? A jumping double from Cold! What is going on right now? How does he do this?
What made those clips great? What makes them such impressive plays that you, as a viewer with no context, could still understand and appreciate what's happening? It's because it's so simple. In contrast, Overwatch is a very chaotic game. In Counter-Strike, you have two defined roles with easy to understand goals. In Overwatch, you have over 20 characters, each with their own abilities, techniques, ultimates, and roles. Not just that, you have multiple different game modes with different objectives. The 6v6 fights of Overwatch were chaotic, flashy, hard to read from a distance.
Going, Sombra, are you here? Are you here? Well, Shiny's down. Zachary, another early pickup. And Alarm, what a transcendence! Right before the EMP hits. Gonna keep Fusion nice and alive here. That was an excellent play.
Gesture realizes he quickly has to jump out and come to the left, but there it is. Here come the kills. Prophet falls to a poison mine from Carpe. And Carpe is brought back to life after Birdring finds the snipe. Stardo's pushed forward, but now it's Graviton Surge. Gesture just walks out of it there. He uses his Fortifier to make sure he's not subject to those abilities. And Stardo charges straight back in, hammer swinging all the way to the fence. And Nuss is not going to get away with this one. First checkpoint, Philly Fusion.
If you've never played Overwatch, hell, even if you have played Overwatch, you probably had no idea what was happening there. I had to replay each of those clips multiple times myself as a veteran of the series to see what was going on. Each clip was so chaotic with shields, barriers, particle effects, and abilities everywhere, it's almost impossible to read. Watching competitive Overwatch is less like watching a sport and more like looking at an I Spy book trying to discern whatever the hell is going on.
But when I first saw Overwatch gameplay, it looked like a hot fucking mess, at least relative to TF2, right? The game was really noisy. Everyone looked like they were floating and hovering around. I see people just getting like bouncing around, all these bright flashing colors. It's like everyone was playing inside of an overexposed pool of molasses.
And even if you put in the time to understand the game's mechanics and characters, you were let down by a boring, stale meta like GOATs. A meta that for over a year has taken very little skill, slows the game to a crawl, and fails to punish sloppy teamwork. The Overwatch League was draining viewers. Sure, the viewer count seemed fine, but it's important to note that a lot of the people that tuned into Overwatch League streams weren't actually invested in the match, but rather clicked on this stream and went AFK to farm Overwatch League tokens to spend on cool skins. I know it's certainly what I did. Overwatch League had millions of dollars riding on it, sponsors that needed to see it succeed. If Overwatch League failed, Bobby Kotick might not get invited over to Robert Kraft's house to cuddle with each other on the couch and explore each other's bodies. Overwatch League needed to be a success for the health of Overwatch, so something had to be done about GOATs. You'd think they learn at this point that Overwatch's balance is very delicate. They did not learn. In August of 2019, Sigma would become the game's 31st hero, and along with his release came Blizzard's solution to GOATs.
From now on, in competitive and quick play, as well as in Overwatch esports, when you queue up for a match, you will be asked to pick a role between support, damage, or tank. When you get into the match, you will only be able to pick the role that you queued for. So if you pick tank, you will be limited to the tanks that you can play. Every team in Overwatch will be comprised of 2 tanks, 2 damage, and 2 support.
This was role queue. If GOATs was a problem because it encouraged a team comp of 3 tanks and 3 supports, why not just force a composition of 2 heroes of each role across all game modes that promotes a more engaging competitive scene? It would make games more exciting, give professional DPS players their job back, and bring back viewers to the Overwatch League.
Pending a but actually is probably the introduction of role queue during Overwatch 1. Having separate ranks for each role was a godsend to anyone whose skills in each role differed wildly. It also allowed people to know what role they were getting themselves into.
Once more, Blizzard had killed the wolf without thinking of the deer population surge, otherwise known as the DPS. This was a change directed at high-level competitive play and the Overwatch League. This is a tiny fraction of the game's overall player base. A vast majority of Overwatch players are casual players of a medium skill level, and at this level of play, not all roles are equal. See, even though for the past year high-level Overwatch didn't use any DPS heroes, the casual players love the DPS heroes. People that play FPS games like watching people die when they click on them. and 2/3 of Overwatch's total heroes are DPS heroes. To the casual player, playing Damage Sponge and Healer was less instantly rewarding, and therefore, tank and support was chosen less. In your average match of Overwatch pre-roll queue, you could see 4, 5, hell, maybe even 6 total DPS heroes on each team. And post-roll queue, you have whittled that giant number of players down to 2 per team. This did have the intended effect of encouraging more balanced teams across all levels, but if you wanted to play 2/3 of the heroes in the game, you were gonna have to wait your turn. 10+ minute queue times to play a single quick play match as a DPS hero. If you were to spend an hour of your time playing Overwatch while only queuing for DPS, you could spend half of, if not more of that time, sitting on the main menu screen waiting to be placed in a match. If you thought waiting for a match of TF2 during Meet Your Match was rough, you have not seen what playing DPS in Overwatch was like. And I've said it a couple of times now, but I really want to hammer it in here. This was 2/3 of all of the characters in the game, and you had to wait 10 minutes or more for a match that could last as short as 3 minutes. And remember how this was all to encourage a more fun meta? Oh, about that. The new hero Sigma was an alternative to Reinhardt with a shield he could deploy, a stun, and an ability that negated oncoming damage. You may also remember Orisa from earlier, another Reinhardt alternative with a shield, crowd control, and ability to negate oncoming damage. I think you get the idea. Out with the old and in with the new, Blizzard killed goats and invented the double shield composition. Say what you will about goats, but at least it encouraged you to get close to your enemies. The new meta was hiding behind 2 sets of shields to be completely untouchable by the enemy team. And whenever the enemy destroyed the shield, another would go up in its place. Not only did this make for an incredibly lame meta, but now even the casual players were subjected to it.
Overwatch these days, there's just so much stuff. There's just so much stuff. And, you know, that comes out in a million ways. It comes out in, you know, again, not feeling like there's a level of, like, you know, familiarity with what I'm going to be fighting. And then on top of that, you've also got stuff like, you know, shields just getting out of control. Like every tank having a shield now. And I don't want to shoot into shields for 60 minutes. Like, it's not fun.
You needed to wait 10 minutes to get into a match to shoot a brick wall for the chance of actually getting to have fun. Not to mention how reliant the game was starting to get on stuns and negation abilities. It wasn't fun to shoot shields, it wasn't fun to be stunned, and it wasn't fun to have all of your effort wasted because somebody pressed E on their keyboard.
When certain mechanics get added, like anti-heal or invulnerability onto cooldowns, right? It's tough to balance them. Invulnerability is one of the hardest things to balance, and it started with Bath Lamp. So people talk about Transcendence, right? Transcendence doesn't make you invulnerable, it just gives you crazy amounts of healing, but you can still die through Transcendence. You cannot die through a BAP lamp. Think about that. Transcendence, which was always considered, at least for the first 13 seasons of Overwatch, was considered the anti-ult ultimate, is sufficiently much worse than a cooldown.
Because of Blizzard's obsession with balancing Overwatch for the league and coming up with band-aid fixes for metas they didn't like, the game was becoming less fun as a direct result. People stopped playing the game. Streamers stopped streaming Overwatch. What's the point of subjecting your live viewers to a stream as engaging as the average Hassan reaction? If it wasn't obvious by now, Blizzard is really bad at balancing Overwatch.
I think Overwatch has been more poorly balanced than it has been well balanced during its lifespan. Unfortunately, that's a side effect of just how large the roster of characters has become, as well as the nature of the gameplay elements.
But for as bad as Overwatch was getting, TF2 wasn't faring much better. The TF2 community throughout 2019 has been dealing with a large problem of their own. Nothing. Literally nothing. Since the Blue Moon update, there hasn't been anything of substance, just seasonal gambling crates and some limited time Halloween maps. Before Jungle Inferno, there was at least the promise of a major update, some shred of hope to hold on to, but now, TF2 fans were lost in the dark. People speculated about a hypothetical heavy update. During Meet Your Match, a major selling point was the war between Pyro and Heavy, with the winner receiving a rework and a new set of weapons. Obviously, that war resulted in Jungle Inferno, but the fans were holding out hope that their favorite fat Russian would get some love too. But nothing ever came. And during this period, a problem much, much worse than a lack of content was beginning to surface. The game was being invaded, not by humans, but by AI. An invasion of aim-hacking, botted players began infiltrating casual servers. These snipers were not controlled by players, but were fully automated by AI. The sniper is a glass cannon type character. With their sniper rifle, he can pick classes off from long range, but is weak when confronted up close. At least, in theory. The sniper can quickscope. With well-aimed precision, you can deal 150 damage to an opponent the second you scope in. This quickscope will instantly kill 5 out of the 9 classes, leave 3 with minimal health, and only the heavy can shrug off a quickscope headshot. This is all without even charging the sniper rifle. A charged sniper rifle shot kills every class instantly. Normally, this high power potential is held back by our human limitations. Even the juiciest of sniper mains are gonna miss their shots sometimes. But a fully automated AI bot with aim hacks, they don't miss. Ever. Every corner you turned, every step you took, every time you left the confines of your spawn room, you were at risk of being instantly decimated by a wave of these aim-hacking bots. And any chance of these bots being banned by the game's anti-cheat was hopeless, because VAC anti-cheat is not an anti-cheat. It's a suggestion. The only way to get these bots out of a server was to go through the process of vote kicking each bot one by one. A process made even harder by the fact you can only kick one player at a time off a server. In a 24-player server where half or more of the players were bots, it was impossible. Even if you can manage to kick a bot out, like the head of a Hydra, another would take its place. And the bots didn't stop there. They would spam and flood the voice and text chat. You'd probably hear more N-words in a casual TF2 server than a KKK rally.
Hey, can I get a medic?
These bots were used to spread hate and vitriol by internet trolls with one purpose: kill TF2. Make the game so unplayable that it dies.
It's probably 1 in every 5 servers I find one that's not riddled with bots. In the end, I probably end up only playing like 45 minutes out of a 2-hour session due to having to server hop and wait to be queued.
You know, I've been playing TF2 for 10 years, and recently, it's just become unplayable. And I'm not even kidding, it's just been like, I don't know, 70% of all players have been bots sometimes. And sometimes it seems like it's not that bad, but it is, you know? And it's really hard, because I usually just started just automatically closing the game and acting like it's a normal thing. But it's not, and we need to, you know, stop thinking of it like that.
It had been so long since Blue Moon with no sign of Valve, and they hadn't done anything to combat this rise of bots. The TF2 players desperately waited for Valve to fix the botting problem. There was no way a company as respected and beloved by fans as Valve was going to let one of their best games rot by being infested with aim hackers. Right? I mean, there had to be some people in this company who've seen what's been happening. Somebody has to help. They have to. The TF2 players were once more left in the dark, in the worst state the game had ever been in. People began to speculate that Valve saw Jungle Inferno as a failure, and as one last patch to balance the game, released Blue Moon as a parting gift before never touching the game again. Had Valve truly left TF2 to die at the hands of bots?
It's just become a fucking crapshoot. Like, you go in, you queue, oh, there are 18 bots, better leave. Queue again, oh, you queue into a harvest lobby, because that's where all the fucking bots are. Oh, there are 17 bots there, better leave. I don't know if there's another game on the planet where you literally just can't fucking play the game after 3 a.m.
As Valve was ignoring a potential PR disaster, Blizzard had just created one for themselves. During October of 2019, there were massive protests in Hong Kong to protest the Chinese government doing typical Chinese government things. Anyways, around this time, during a Hearthstone tournament, a player named Blitzchung would win the tournament, and in the post-game interview, he'd voice support for Hong Kong live on air.
光复香港时代革命。
导播可以切回来。好，导播谢谢。谢谢。好。
Now, what Blitzchung did was super based. Voicing your opinion live on air about social injustice is awesome. But you can see the interviewer is literally starting to hide their face off screen so as to not be associated with Blitzchung. And they immediately cut to sponsors. You see, if there's one thing Bobby Kotick loves more than kissing Robert Kraft on his soft, tender lips, it's kissing China's ass. Blizzard did not take kindly to someone speaking out against China in an official tournament, so they banned Blitzchung from future tournaments, revoked all of the prize money he earned from the tournament, and fired the 2 casters who interviewed him. For a company that has a statue outside of their office with the inscription, "Every voice matters," it sure seemed as though Blizzard thought his voice didn't matter. This immediately turned into a PR disaster overnight, as people rightfully criticized Blizzard for being a giant China shill.
Here's a story which just won't go away. Activision Blizzard. It has suspended a gamer and taken his prize money away because he made comments supporting Hong Kong protesters.
This was a really bad look for Blizzard, especially with BlizzCon right around the corner. Blizzard needed to win the public back. They needed a distraction. Luckily, they had something to show off at BlizzCon that would for sure take the eyes off of Blitzchung.
But I really need to see what Overwatch has to offer, don't you? Let's go take a look, shall we?
Monsieur, does this mean Overwatch is back?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Wow, that was a really cool reveal. It was always a joy to see Jeff Kaplan announce something epic. But, what? How would a sequel even work for a title like Overwatch, a live service game? Would it be an entirely new game or what? Well, stick with me, because this is going to get real messy later. Overwatch 2 was a massive PvE campaign focused on the lore and story of Overwatch. Jeff promised a full campaign, skill trees, and highly replayable hero missions. The campaign with the skill trees and missions was Overwatch 2. It was going to be its own title you'd purchase separately from Overwatch 1. And the core PvP experience of Overwatch was going to be updated in tandem with Overwatch 2's PvE. So people who bought Overwatch 1 weren't going to have to compromise their gameplay experience in favor of the PvE. It looked like both would survive alongside each other. This sounds incredibly confusing, because it is.
The way they did it, I don't know a lot about it, but just, I didn't know what it was. Like, I didn't know if it was an update or a DLC or a new game for the longest time. The rollout of that was just a complete disaster from Blizzard.
But at least the gameplay looked promising, so the fans were hyped. This was a big development for the lore nerds because the story of Overwatch has hardly progressed since the game's launch 3 years ago, and an expanded PvE mode has been something the fans have wanted for a long time. After Overwatch 2's announcement, people mostly forgot about Blitzchung. Thankfully, Blizzard would learn their lesson and would never get into a major controversy like this again. However, for fans of both Overwatch and TF2, something completely unexpected was going to happen in 2020 that would completely change the history of both games going forward. COVID. It was COVID. Just a couple months after the announcement of Overwatch 2, the world was put into lockdown, and it threw a wrench in the development of Overwatch. I'd say the same for TF2, but that game doesn't have a development team to begin with. If Blizzard wanted to keep the hype train going for Overwatch 2, they were going to have to adapt to the new normal on the fly. In April, they released Echo, the final hero Overwatch 1 would ever receive. Unfortunately for players at the time, regardless of how well designed or fun Echo was, She was a DPS hero. So the addition of Echo made DPS queue times even worse. But Blizzard had to push onward. COVID and lockdown fucking sucked. People just wanted to dick around and have some fun. And TF2 just so happens to be one of the most fun games ever made. In spite of the bots, in spite of the lack of updates, in spite of Meet Your Match, TF2 was growing. Sure, you could say part of this climb in players could be attributed to the rise of the aimbots, but the aimbots did not make up the majority of the player base. People came together to play TF2 in a time where people just wanted to have some good-hearted fun. It wasn't the competitive mode, it wasn't matchmaking, and it wasn't modernizing TF2 that brought people back. It was the fun, casual gameplay. Something that had been lost in a time where companies were frantically trying to create the next big esport.
Team Fortress 2 makes you think you're on a team with people who are all working towards the same goal, but you're really not. You're in your own little world, and your entire team really, at the end of the day, is in their own little world, and they're just being kind of like subtly influenced towards the same spot. I think that makes it a lot of fun, actually, because you can it's what makes the game kind of more like a sandbox game than what Overwatch is, right? Because you can go in, and you can do whatever you want, and at the end of the day, most of the time you're going to be contributing, whether it be on accident or not. Or you can go in and you can try really hard, and you'll be contributing that way. With Overwatch, you can't really accidentally do well. You have to really try at it. At least in my experience, you had to really focus. You had to, put on your gamer glasses. And I can understand wanting to be in that mood. Obviously, I've been in that mood before, and I open up TF2 when I'm in that mood, and I do that. But TF2 is so versatile in that even if you're not in the mood to try really hard, you can still open the game and have fun and not feel like you're going to get yelled at. And that's great. I like that about TF2.
Throughout the course of the year, TF2 would go on to break player records from back when the game was being actively updated. There were more players now than when Jungle Inferno dropped.
Besides that, I would say that TF2's gameplay has also aged quite well, and it's one of the last remaining games from the era of having community servers and having these like bigger, more casual focused team fights and stuff like that, whereas a lot of the more modern games are very focused on the smaller team sizes only, with a very competitive sort of style to it. And I think that a lot of modern players sort of miss that, and often when they return to TF2, they're like kind of wondering, damn, why did I leave this in the first place? I think that that's a good sign in TF2's favor.
But as TF2 was seeing unprecedented player growth, Overwatch was struggling. For years, the TF2 community had been suffering from a lack of content, and now Overwatch players got a taste of the same medicine. Updates were meaningless and sparse. In the first few years, Overwatch players had come to anticipate regular content drops and exciting seasonal events, but now there was none of that. In Overwatch's first year, the players received Junkenstein's Revenge, a fun PvE side mode that was fun for the time. Now, in Overwatch's fourth year, players would receive Junkenstein's Revenge again. Rinse and repeat for every seasonal event, and a couple new cosmetic items you could gamble for. Sound familiar? The players were bored. They were bored of waiting for news of Overwatch 2, they were bored of trying to break double shields, they were bored of waiting for DPS queue times. The Overwatch community wanted answers, and yet, things only seemed to get more confusing. In April of 2021, Jeff Kaplan, the beloved lead developer of Overwatch, would leave Blizzard and Overwatch behind. This man was the face of Overwatch. It might as well have been his child. He was the person who would deliver news to the people. He was the person who would interact with the community the most. He was the man spearheading Overwatch 2, and he just left with nothing more than a paragraph-long goodbye note. It didn't make sense. Why would Jeff pack his bags and go less than a year after announcing the sequel to the game he loved? As time went on, we would get our answer.
A frat boy culture. That is how Activision Blizzard is now being described here in this new lawsuit filed by the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing.
If there's anything people learned from the Blitzchung incident, it's that Blizzard sucked. But Blizzard did more than just suck. They guzzled. The Blizzard offices encouraged a culture of workplace harassment, groping, and all-around degeneracy.
I think at this point it's safe to say Activision Blizzard is the most evil video game company ever. And not because their games are shitty, you know, they made Overwatch and that's a crime against humanity, sure. But a couple months ago, it was revealed of the horrifying workplace culture and the absolutely revolting things that happened there.
There are stories of Blizzard employees going on what they called cube crawls, where they'd get drunk and go from cubicle to cubicle, acting immature and groping as they pleased. Blizzard employees also had what they called the Cosby Suite at a hotel they visited. And I mean, go figure these guys would idolize Bill Cosby. One of the crazier horror stories from Blizzard was the story of a woman who would keep bags of breast milk in a work fridge to give to her child, only to discover someone in the company had swiped it, presumably to drink. The breast milk bandit has never been caught and could still be working at the company today.
How has Blizzard's controversies affected my enjoyment of Overwatch? Short answer, no, but the breast milk incident is very, very funny. Yeah, the controversies that Blizzard faced were very entertaining, to say the least, but I can tell you one thing, it has not hampered my enjoyment of the booties on the ladies, if I can say that.
Many of the people behind what made Overwatch great turned out to be scum-sucking dickbags, and it took the magic out of Overwatch. And it didn't end there. It turns out Jesse McCree wasn't just a fictional cowboy name, but an actual Blizzard employee who was implicated in the harassment and enjoyed spending time in the Cosby Suite. That's bad. And on top of it all was Bobby Kotick, who allegedly knew about the harassment to some extent, but never took significant action on it, allowing it to run rampant. Over 100 Activision Blizzard employees would stage a walkout demanding that Bobby resign, but he never did. All of the documents for this are publicly available to read for yourself, and they're as bad as people build them up to be. Truly reprehensible stuff. This was a PR catastrophe that made the Blitzchung situation seem like a small oopsie. No one wanted to be associated with Blizzard anymore. LEGO ceased their partnership with Overwatch, something I'm still miffed about, and all of Overwatch League's sponsors would rapidly pull out, which means going into its next season, Overwatch League would have low viewership and 0 sponsors. And speaking of Overwatch League, it became obvious it was a total failure. Not only was it expensive as hell to maintain, with each team requiring over $20 million each, but viewership was at an all-time low, and Blizzard was left hanging with 0 sponsors. For some reason, the Overwatch League would sign an exclusivity deal with YouTube for broadcasts, which means no one would earn any more Overwatch League tokens for watching. And without the tokens to inflate viewer counts, people wouldn't even bother clicking on the streams.
I was never really a fan of the Overwatch League, personally. I felt like they were too ambitious, and also I am a bit of a critic of this idea of like a very forced esport. I think that coming out of the gate, saying this game will be an esport, and shoving it down people's throats, and getting all this sort of fake hype around the game that it's not really organic coming from the grassroots, I think is sort of a recipe for disaster and just something that rubs me the wrong way.
Just a few years ago, Overwatch was the most talked about game. Everyone loved it. It won Game of the Year, but now it was floundering. Player numbers were falling, content wasn't releasing, and the company behind the game was revealed for who they truly were. Despite the two fan bases constantly clashing on which side had the better game, this was the worst state both TF2 and Overwatch had ever been in.
The botting crisis, it's the dick in the ice cream. That's what I've always said. You can go to Dairy Queen, you can get a really fucking amazing cake. Everything about it can be phenomenal. The sponge, the icing, the toppings, all of that can be great. But if there's a dick inside of the cake, you don't want to eat it. You can eat around it, and when you do, it's amazing. But then you get a fucking tip of the foreskin, and you're like, fuck, I don't want to play this shit anymore.
Despite the short-term victory of rising player counts, TF2 was still rotting due to the bots, and Valve was still adding cases to gamble in the middle of all of this.
I'm angry at Valve. Like, I think they're pretty despicable. And that's actually maybe why I have so much animosity towards some of these recent updates. It's like they're trying to milk the community for money. Money they don't even need. They've got freaking Steam. And I know that ultimately, yeah, if we had a choice, we probably would prefer to get new hats and new things rather than nothing. And it's great that it supports the like custom item makers. But like from just purely looking at it from Valve's perspective, they're happy to just sit there and let like aimbot bots just run wild. Like OCE servers are completely unplayable and just completely like give their players nothing in terms of like actually improving their game. But then they're like, oh, but like, you know, we're here with like the credit card swiper, so line up, kids.
For the fans, it looked like it was over. Neither game came out of this rivalry looking good. Both games had died. But maybe they didn't have to.
Is Valve planning any major updates for Team Fortress 2?
Yes, we have updates for Team Fortress 2.
Okay, because are you aware of the ongoing bot or hacker crisis?
Oh yeah, we're very, very aware of the problem and I think we have good solutions for it.
It's been over 4 years since the bot invasion has been in full swing, and Valve has still refused to take significant action against the bots. One of the only times Valve would make a change in TF2 in regards to the bots is when they made it so free-to-play players couldn't use voice or text chat until they bought something from the shop in an attempt to get the bots to stop spamming slurs. However, the bots would immediately find a workaround, and the free players were punished for the bots' behavior. You couldn't even call for a medic unless you opened your wallet for Valve. People were angry and fed up. On May 7th of 2022, YouTuber Squim Jim created a video titled, "Maybe it's time we get Valve to do something about TF2."
I think maybe we're at a point where we need to make a big deal out of this. And at this point, what do we have to lose? They already do nothing, they can't do any less, so we might as well try. The idea I had going into it was always, what is there to lose? You spend 10 minutes writing emails or 30 seconds writing a tweet and you go about your day. And after that, I didn't really know what would happen. But I knew that organized complaining was always going to be better than unorganized complaining. It's a lot easier to get attention when everyone's doing something similar at the exact same time. And of course I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't at least mildly hopeful, but at the end of the day, it was always going to be better than doing nothing at all.
This video would end up being the catalyst, because shortly after it was uploaded, more figureheads in the TF2 community would meet in private and begin to discuss something. Valve has only been able to get away with ignoring the bot problem for so long because they've been able to ignore it. What if there was a way to make the problem so obvious that it couldn't be ignored? Eventually, a plan was settled. On the same day, everyone was going to post about the problem with the same hashtag and encourage their viewers to do the same. With enough people on board, it would be unignorable.
I was part of organizing it, and the message was about spreading positivity and showing how much we cared about the game. We wanted to get positive attention towards us, right? We didn't want to be the angry, pissed off game at that time. We just wanted to show how much we loved it and how much we wanted to save the game.
This was going to make Valve notice. This was going to make the world see the bot problem. This was Save TF2.
If you've been on the World Wide Web at any point over the last 24 hours, I'm sure you've seen #SaveTF2.
Gaming and content creators sharing thoughts and love for Team Fortress 2 in hopes that the developer, Valve, will fix the game.
Now, Team Fortress 2 has basically been unplayable for 2 to 3 years at this point, even longer.
Many feel as though Valve hasn't shown this game the love that the community has shown. With Valve ignoring the game, seemingly it is currently plagued by bot infestation.
TF2 community, we hear you. We love this game and know you do too. We see how large this issue has become and are working to improve things.
I was extremely hopeful. I thanked them with a reply and just kind of sat patiently waiting for the changes that they were going to make.
At first, I didn't believe it because, again, we're in a new era where there's no communication. And that's why when I saw it, like, I also didn't know what to believe in. I didn't know whether or not they were going to hold up on their word, because again, they haven't been communicating with us, so we wouldn't really know much. But again, I was kind of just hoping for the best, you know, like, we hadn't gotten anything like this, so why not be positive about it?
I was cautiously optimistic, like everyone else.
Valve tweeted, oh my gosh. We were all very hopeful, high on hopium, and we were like, maybe things can get better.
Against all odds, in just under 24 hours, the internet put enough pressure on Valve to get an actual response. And not just that, they vowed to actually improve the game.
I think I fell in line with the majority opinion, that being one of cautious optimism. You know, if your dad comes back from the milk store after abandoning you for 5 years, and then says, "Hey Timmy, I'm gonna be in your life again," you struggle to believe them.
A part of me was hopeful, but I've grown to be extremely skeptical of anything Valve, or really any other major game company, does.
Honestly, at first, you know, I'm a cynical person by nature, so as a result, I was very doubtful that the players kind of shaking their fist at Valve was going to do anything.
I've read the tweet. I didn't even look at it.
There were people who were skeptical, rightfully so. I mean, it's not like Valve has a very good track history with the bot issue, but as time went on, things genuinely seemed to get better. The game would receive multiple patches that would make dealing with bots much easier.
One thing they did that is insanely overlooked is they made it so that both teams could kick bots at the exact same time, where prior to the movement, only one team could kick. So while the bots were still there, albeit a little bit reduced, they effectively doubled the speed at which you could get rid of them. And yeah, that was an amazing win.
Before Save TF2, it was commonly known that Team Fortress 2 most likely had one person working on it in their spare time. It appears because of Save TF2, Valve hired a contractor to help fix up TF2 and work on the bot situation. You could say that Save TF2 doubled the amount of people working on TF2, and you wouldn't technically be wrong.
I mean, I was hopeful. I'm always hopeful that Valve is gonna, I don't know, hire somebody new that actually cares. Because that's really what it will take. Hire somebody else to do it. And apparently they did do it, but that guy was just like a coder. He's not like a game designer.
It finally seemed like there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Sure, the game might never be updated or loved by Valve again, but at least the TF2 community had assurance from Valve that things were going to get better. On the flip side, however, the Overwatch community was starting to get sick of playing their game in its preserved state. It's 2022 now, which means it's been almost 3 years since Overwatch received Echo. The game has been stagnant for years now. Blizzard remained pretty tight-lipped about Overwatch 2, but what they did show of its PvE was genuinely exciting. Cool robot physics where they could knock into each other and shoot each other. Fun, unique skills for each hero to shake up their playstyle and feel powerful. And customizable skill trees so each player could personalize their experience. But as the year progressed, things were starting to get scary. First was the Overwatch reveal event that June. This presentation did announce Junker Queen, a highly anticipated character, but it also gave the players a taste of the direction Overwatch was headed in.
And along with the free-to-play change, we're doing away with loot boxes entirely. We have a new Battle Pass model coming in, and we have store as well, so players will have a lot more control about how they interact with the game and how they acquire new content.
The game was going free-to-play, adding Battle Passes, and adding an in-game shop. This looked concerning. Were they just going to turn Overwatch into a Fortnite ripoff? Well, okay. They are getting rid of loot boxes in favor of this new system. Maybe it's better that they're getting rid of gambling and moving to a more consumer-friendly practice where players can just buy what they want. Surely they were doing this in the interests of the customer. The game was also making a major change by removing one of the tank slots and making the game 5v5. To the players who had just spent the past 4 years shooting shields, this was fantastic news. This would be a change that would speed up the pace of the game and make tanks more satisfying to play, as each tank would be receiving buffs to compensate for the other being removed. But then came the unfortunate news. The PvE had been delayed. Do you remember when I said that Overwatch 2 was the PvE and Overwatch 1 was considered the PvP that would be updated alongside it? Well, Blizzard had gotten rid of that entirely. Now, the PvP was Overwatch 2, with the PvE coming later. Overwatch 2 would come out in October, advertised as early access. However, the PvE wouldn't come out until 2023. You know, the reason Overwatch 2 was called Overwatch 2? But despite all of the red flags, the community was just excited at the promise of getting content again. And on October 4th of 2022, Overwatch 2 would finally release after years of waiting. After the losing streak Blizzard was on, they seriously needed a win. This was going to be the update to save Overwatch.
All right. Fuck! Another year, another moral dilemma for Blizzard. I wanted to love Overwatch 2, and I still do as a video game. I wanted to be wrong about Blizzard being a increasingly shitty company that sniffs dog farts, but I continue to be right about that as well.
Overwatch 2 isn't the worst game I've played this year, but it's definitely the most disappointing. But still better than Valorant.
I don't know if I gave it the fairest chance, but it kind of fell short to me. As I've said, I didn't really like the fact they removed a second tank, which is just my opinion, which I don't know how popular it is. I've never really seen. I haven't looked too much into why the core gameplay of Overwatch 2 wasn't liked as much, but it felt a bit weird playing it. I just really, really liked Overwatch 1.
Overwatch 2's release was really underwhelming. It didn't really change very much about the game, at least from my eyes, from my casual eyes. It is basically the same thing to me.
It was bad. It was really bad. After years of development and hype building from Blizzard, what the fanbase essentially received was 3 new heroes and a couple new maps. If Blizzard had just kept up their normal update schedule they had with Overwatch 1, they would have just received this content by now. Without the PvE, there was nothing that warranted this being a sequel to the original game. Was Overwatch 2 really just an excuse to revamp the original game's monetization and make it free to play? Oh no. Back in Overwatch 1, sure there were loot crates, but they were really easy to obtain, and you could get credits for them that let you just buy other skins. You could earn all of the game's skins for free by just playing the game, but not in Overwatch 2. No. Gone were the free loot boxes, and in was the brand new item shop, where each legendary skin costs $20 each, in a game with over 30 heroes. And it wasn't just the skins you had to pay for. Heroes, something that in the previous game was completely free, you now had to pay for with the Battle Pass. At launch, the new hero Kiriko was instantly unlockable by purchasing the Battle Pass, and if you wanted them for free, you were going to need to grind to get them. A massive problem being is that Kiriko is one of the most overtuned heroes in the history of Overwatch, and if you wanted to win, you were going to need to pay up. You could lose a competitive match from no fault of your own because your teammate didn't want to cough up money to buy the meta hero. That was if you even got to play the game, because at launch, Overwatch 2 suffered from massive server issues that forced people into multiple-hour waiting queues. And even if you got in, there was no guarantee you'd play for long. Oh, are you f***ing kidding me? The game would also suffer through massive bugs. Heroes like Bastion, Torbjorn, and Mei would be removed for weeks at a time due to game-breaking bugs in their kit. And a massive chunk of the game's map pool was removed with no explanation. Promised features from the game's trailers are still missing to this day, but in return, maps receive day and night cycles. I asked for this? The fans waited for years with the promise of massive additions to PvP and PvE, just to receive an unfocused mess with removed content and a shop update.
I haven't played Overwatch 2. Actually, no, that's not true. I did play Overwatch 2 with some friends when it first came out, and we realized very quickly that it's just Overwatch again, and we were really disappointed because, honestly, I was like, oh, maybe they improved the game. But, I don't know. The things that they changed about the game weren't different enough.
Overwatch 2 was panned by both critics and players. The update was so bad, it made people want to go back to playing Double Shield again. Except, you couldn't even play the old Overwatch. You were stuck with Overwatch 2, whether you liked it or not. And a lot of people did not like it.
I spent like 30 minutes trying to think of a single good change they made to Overwatch, and I couldn't come up with anything, so I'll have to skip this question.
6 years ago, Valve released the Meet Your Match update to an overwhelmingly negative reception during a time where Overwatch was basking in critical praise and accolades. Now, it seems the tables have been completely turned. Now, TF2 was the game with a huge, massive positive force behind it, while Overwatch 2 was drowning in negative attention. But there was still hope to hold on to. Blizzard was supposedly still hard at work on that new PvE, and even if it had been delayed, it was better for it to be delayed than for it to release in a bad state. For the sake of Overwatch, this campaign had better be worth it. Months would pass without the PvE, and as time went on, things were not getting better. The honeymoon period had ended with 5v5, and it turns out removing that second tank severely damaged the game's balance. For starters, the tanks were unkillable. With one less tank, both supports could funnel all of their healing into one tank. Take a hero like Orisa, for example. They'd been reworked to no longer have a shield and be more fun to play, but she was made to be practically invincible. For starters, she had Fortify, an ability that makes her take less damage, makes her invulnerable to headshots, and made her immune to every stun in the game. On top of that, she had a javelin she could spin that would mitigate all damage as well. And on top of that, she had a javelin that would stun you and send you backwards. And her ultimate ability would also give her the benefits of Fortify. You essentially had a tank with 4 abilities that completely negate your damage output, with 2 full-time supports dumping all of their heals into her. And this is how all of Overwatch 2's tanks were designed, because they needed to compensate for the lack of a second tank, which also meant there were no off-tanks anymore. Every tank needed to be the main tank, which removed how dynamic and flexible the tank role used to be.
Overwatch had its core identity slightly ripped out of it in the second one. I don't know, I really did like the six players, 2-2-2 format of it. I love that. And I think just the way the game's identity shifted over the years in a different way than TF2 has, which has remained, I feel like it's had a pretty consistent gameplay philosophy the whole time.
And over time, more and more overpowered heroes would be added into the battle pass, forcing you to spend money or play at a massive disadvantage. People needed that PvE. I mean, they've been working on this PvE for over 4 years. They should have something to show for it by now. Right? Right?
Hey guys, Matt Mr. X joined by some special guests. It's game director Aaron Keller and executive producer Jared Noose joining me here on DevChat. How are you guys doing?
Hey Matt, doing great. Thank you so much for having us today.
And so we're left with another difficult choice. Do we continue to pour all that effort into PvE, hoping that we can land it at some point in the future? Or do we stick with this set of values that we've aligned on and focus on the live game and focus on serving all of you? With everything we've learned about what it takes to operate this game at the level that you deserve, it's clear that we can't deliver on that original vision for PvE that was shown in 2019. What that means is that we won't be delivering that dedicated hero mode with talent trees, that long-term power progression. Those things just aren't in our plans anymore.
Going forward, though, rather than doing a big one-time PvE releasing, and rather than pouring all of our efforts into these singular releases, we're planning to make co-op gameplay and co-op experiences just part of our live roadmap. So we want you to be able to experience it more often and with more variety than we had originally announced.
That's right. The PvE the fans have been led to believe was right around the corner was gutted. The hero missions, skill trees, and replayable missions were gone.
The aspect of the game that I was particularly interested in was actually the PvE feature, and that ended up being completely scrapped. So from that regard, I would say it was a disappointing sequel.
I was really looking forward to the PvE stuff, and they didn't add it, so pretty much the only real reason for me to try and play it seriously again was removed. So yeah, fail.
Remember how Overwatch 2 was released under the guise of it being early access while Blizzard still worked on the PvE? It was all for nothing. Besides a couple new maps and heroes, Overwatch 2 was nothing more than a ploy to revamp the game's monetization. The fans had been rug pulled after years of hype.
So we're in a situation now where Overwatch 2 the main thing that Overwatch 2 is supposed to do isn't happening. That's right. You know the only thing that you were supposed to get excited about with the game? They canceled it.
Well, welcome to the everyday experience of being an Overwatch 2 fan. Every time there is a new announcement from the Overwatch development team, it's just bad news. It's getting visited by Krampus every few months when they make some kind of new details about what's going on with Overwatch. It's always just awful, disastrous news.
But why? Why lead the players on for so long? Why even make an Overwatch 2 in the first place? What were they doing for 4 years if all they have to show for it is this? Well, supposedly, the answer goes all the way to the top. Allegedly, Bobby Kotick and Upper Blizzard management were so disappointed with the Overwatch League's failure, they deemed Overwatch as a whole a failure, and deprived the development team of the manpower and time to develop the game they had been advertising. Development was rushed so Overwatch would have content to spend money on again, which led to Overwatch 2 being the rushed disaster it ended up being. Eventually, Blizzard would release a small taste of what Overwatch PvE could have been, but with no skills, no equipment, and no replayable missions, the mode was dead on arrival, with players struggling to find lobbies less than a week into its release.
Overwatch had a story? Is that what the invasion missions were? An advancement of a story we waited 7 years for?
In a 2023 quarterly report, Blizzard themselves would admit that player numbers and interest in Overwatch 2 was dwindling. In a bid to get more players, Blizzard would release the game on Steam, something that would have been unthinkable years ago. And after Overwatch 2's horrible launch, underwhelming PvE, gutted content, and corporate greed, the Overwatch fanbase was finally able to give Blizzard their direct feedback via Steam's review feature. It went about how you'd expect it would.
I don't know which Blizzard treats worse, its players or its female employees.
I cried at the part where Reaper said, "Buy, buy, buy," and locked all the new heroes behind a battle pass and scrapped the story mode. Truly, the game of all time. Thank you, Activision Blizzard.
Overwatch porn creators work harder than game devs.
I know Overwatch 2 gets a lot of hate, but personally, I don't think it gets enough.
Overwatch 2 would quickly become the worst rated Steam game of all time. Many people would call this a review bomb, but I think it was an explosion of pent-up frustration at Blizzard from their own community.
Although being review bombed isn't a fun experience, it's been great to see lots of new players jump into Overwatch 2 for the first time. Our goal with Overwatch 2 has been to make the game more accessible than ever for more people than ever before. Many of the reviews on Steam mention the cancellation of the much larger component of PvE that was announced in 2019 as one of their primary reasons for dissatisfaction with the game. I get that. That announcement was about an ambitious project that we ultimately couldn't deliver. If we can't turn back the clock, then what can we do? We can keep adding and improving to Overwatch 2. That's how we move forward.
It's hard to think that just 6 years ago, Overwatch was capturing the hearts of many, was showered in awards and accolades, and even won Game of the Year. But that time was long gone, and there was no going back. The months following Save TF2 were an improvement. There were times where there were less bots, and due to the new vote-kicking improvements, it made it really easy to give them the boot. But even if things were better for a time, it didn't last. Save TF2 pretty much ended with Valve's tweet. It seemed like the community had reached their end goal. Valve responded and said they'd fix the issue. But Valve only offered band-aids, not actual fixes. As time progressed, the bots would come back out of the woodwork in droves again. Servers would once more be filled with bots. So many, it wasn't even feasible to vote kick them anymore. Save TF2 was a victory for the community, but it was a brief, temporary, fleeting victory. The community would once more try to reach out to Valve, this time from the TF2 workshop, where TF2's community-made content is created and taken from. UEAK Crash would write in a letter signed by a massive number of workshoppers and community members, asking for Valve to add more content to the game outside of its temporary, seasonal updates. And just a day later, they'd receive a response.
The last few Team Fortress Summer events have only been item updates. But this year, we're planning on shipping a full-on update-sized update with items, maps, taunts, unusual effects, war paints, and who knows what else.
Team Fortress 2 was going to have a major update. Who knows what else? This was going to be massive. The Team Fortress community immediately rejoiced at the news of a major update. The last time Valve made a blog post asking for community submissions was during the development of Jungle Inferno. A little while later, the blog post would be edited to state that this was not in fact an update-sized update, but rather a holiday-sized update. About the same size as the seasonal content we'd already been getting. Oh. That summer update would eventually come, and there were plenty of good maps and cosmetics. But with the bots starting to get really bad again, it was hard to fully enjoy the update. The bots were still running rampant with no signs of stopping. And if Save TF2 couldn't get Valve to care, what could?
More so, I already knew that this was not going to work out because the angle that Save TF2 took was people saying, "Hey Valve, we love your game. And, if you have a moment, pretty please fix it. We love your game. We love talking about your game." Instead of holding Valve's face into their mess and saying, "Hey, Valve, your game is fucking broken. Take some responsibility and fix your shit." That's what we should have done.
And maybe Valve is just really stupid. I have to make that assumption, right? Maybe they thought that we were complaining about the bugs in the game and not the bot crisis. And so when they hired that guy, they're like, "All right, fix the bugs. The TF2 community wants their bugs fixed because we haven't been fixing the bugs." Because that's what happened. They fixed the bugs. They're like a multi-million-dollar corporation can't do anything about some teenagers in a basement. It's nuts.
The Overwatch League is dead. I don't mean symbolically or that no one watches it. No, I mean dead. After lawsuits from the teams were launched at Blizzard, a dwindling viewer count, and all of the money spent trying to make it work, the Overwatch League was finally, mercifully, allowed to die.
Overwatch League, I always thought was dumb. I mean, everyone knows that every single esports team in the world ever loses money, pretty much. Not that esports isn't great, but just that's not who gamers are. We don't pick who we want to watch or support based on oh, I live in this city, so I'm going to support my city. I think we're just really interested in watching the best versus the best. That it might have had that, but do we want to go to stadiums? Do we want to have all this? Do we need all this crazy high production?
There was a case to be made that Overwatch League ruined Overwatch. After all, it set the standard that Overwatch needed to be balanced like an esport, and many of Overwatch's biggest mistakes were a result of trying to balance the game for top-level play.
Overwatch League also ended up dealing a lot of harm to the esports ecosystem because they sort of sold this picture of, the future of esports being on the level of NFL or whatever it may be, with this worldwide stadium ecosystem, etc. And I think that a lot of investors got burned by the Overwatch League shortcomings, and that trickled down to affect the growth of esports as a whole.
However, there were people that were passionate about the Overwatch League. People at Blizzard that genuinely loved the project and wanted to see Overwatch succeed as an esport.
We should all just look back at it and remember the moments that took our breath away. We have to remember the friendships we got to form and the lessons that we learned. So from all of us, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being a part of this incredible journey. It's been an honor, a privilege, and a joy to share this experience with all of you. Thank you so much.
These people have been fired. In October of 2023, Microsoft acquired Blizzard Activision. And when the new year rolled around, they needed to cut off all of the workers Microsoft considered unneeded. Nearly 2,000 people from Blizzard Activision and Xbox were laid off in a mass culling. And some of the major cuts included nearly everyone involved with the Overwatch League and the PvE. And soon after, Overwatch Esports would be bought out by a Saudi Arabian gaming company. Any hope of Overwatch becoming the massive esport it wanted to be, or ever receiving that expansive PvE, was crushed. And that's where the story of Overwatch ends. For Team Fortress fans, things aren't looking much better. The game is filled with more bots than ever in spite of a climbing player count, and the game falls more and more into disrepair as time goes on. The bots are killing TF2, and Valve is still trying to crank more and more money out of the fans with new loot crates. Valve is holding TF2 hostage while refusing to fix the bot issue. It's heinous, it's downright evil, and the only reason Valve gets a pass is because of the goodwill they've built up off the reputation for quality games. And unfortunately, that's where the story of TF2 ends. So, which game won? These games have been pitted against each other for years. They are famous rivals. People from both fan bases are still at each other's throats, passionately debating what makes their game better. It feels like every time Overwatch is brought up in proximity to TF2, the TF2 fans will rally behind TF2 not just killing Overwatch once, but twice. And in response, the Overwatch fans will tell TF2 fans to stop being so attached to their dead game and to just move on. So, it's time to finally settle the score once and for all. I've delayed it long enough. It's time to finally say which game won.
Today, I prefer to play Overwatch from an actual gameplay perspective, but TF2 for literally everything else.
I certainly prefer to play TF2 over Overwatch 2. In fact, I've actually never played Overwatch 2. Maybe I should correct that, but I have a feeling that I would not enjoy it regardless.
Of course I enjoy TF2 more. Will always be my favorite game. I've just really learned to appreciate the depth of TF2 over time. Just the fact that I could play Soldier for 10,000 hours and like the amount of niche rocket jumping mechanics, the jump maps, going up the jump leaderboards, market gardening, Beggar's Bazooka mechanics, everything like that. Air shots, double air shots, triple air shots, Mr. Beast combo, Soldier plays.
Neither. Both games lost. If there's one thing I hope I accomplished with this video, it's giving you the full perspective on both of these games and what exactly led to their downfall. They both wanted to compete with each other in the modern market. They both wanted to be the better competitive esport. And in their pursuit of that, the fans got left behind.
These games are two peas in a pod for a reason. Many of their ailments are similar, if not identical.
All the players ever wanted was to just have a fun game to play. And over the years, both TF2 and Overwatch have been losing that. Since the beginning, both TF2 and Overwatch have been pegged as rivals. But I don't think that's fair. Many of the choices each game's developers made was to try and be more like the other game. Overwatch itself is a love letter to TF2, and its groundwork served as the foundation for Overwatch's success.
I see a lot of other video game franchises. Somebody who was like a TF2. Oh, come on. Like, that would actually be sweet.
That would be pretty
cute.
That would be sweet. It's like
Let me just put hats on a bunch of characters.
Yeah. It's all about those hats.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, that was the best part of Bastion, right? So I mean,
all of us
collab,
on
everyone
this,
just gets a hat.
Yeah. I think all of us on the Overwatch team have a deep appreciation for games like TF2 that kind of came before us, and I know that folks on this call definitely do. Siegel, so.
Both of these games have been let down, left to die, never allowed to realize their full potential. And now, sadly, both games are left as shells of their former selves. But maybe it doesn't have to be that way. The Microsoft Blizzard acquisition may have resulted in massive layoffs, but it also means that Bobby Kotick finally got the boot. The man who was allegedly complicit with the horrors at Blizzard and was the main person holding back development for Overwatch. With the death of the Overwatch League and Bobby's departure, it means the game won't need to be balanced around the league anymore, and the game can be changed to be made better for all players. Overwatch essentially has a clean slate right now, one they could use to right the wrongs they made with Overwatch 2. Right now, Blizzard is using their clean slate to make massive sweeping balance changes with long-term ramifications. I guess some things never change. And while things seem dreary for Team Fortress 2, it's not over. People are starting to get fed up with Valve once again, and that is a good thing. If you love TF2, you should not be okay with it being left to die at the hands of bots. Save TF2 should never have ended. With enough passion from the fan base, perhaps we can truly put enough pressure on Valve again to take actual action against the bots. I want to believe that both of these games can truly be made great again, and give us those experiences that made us fall in love with them again. And who knows, maybe someday that might actually happen. We won't know if we don't try.
Do I still believe it's possible to save TF2? I do. I do, even after everything that I've said.
One way or another, I think TF2 will continue to live on, and whether it gets saved in regards to the bots, I don't really know, but I don't think it's going to die anytime soon.
There is no harm in frequently and firmly reminding Valve that, hey, the game you actively offer is playable and expect people to spend money on is broken. Fix your shit. We can't play it as intended, because that's their responsibility, to keep the game functional so long as they offer it as functional, right? So I say keep hammering away at Valve, and maybe we'll get through.
The community can only do so much. And hell, they have been for years. But we need official support.
Maybe I'm coping. I don't think so. Maybe I'm being too positive. I also don't think so. I just believe, I guess. Even if it takes us to, do something huge again. We're gonna do it.
Whether it was luck or skill or whatever weird ingredients led to making the game that TF2 is, or very especially was, like, you can't, no developer, I think, could ever, like, seek out to make it, and it's just so fucking special, and I fucking hate Valve. Anyway, hope I answered your questions.